Well, good evening, folks. It's 5 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started here. I want to make sure we're cognizant of everyone's time, especially in the evening session right around the dinner hour. So um, people can join us as they wish later on in the meeting. But thank you all for joining us. I'm Matt Sikora, work for the airport, and the purpose of today's meeting is to really understand how the airport can go about fixing one of our non-standard conditions, which was discovered as part of our most recent master plan, which is still in the final processes of getting approved by the FAA and our county council, but that is the aircraft park in the Northeast tie downs that are in the runway protection zone. So what this visiting session will do is we're trying to get ideas from y'all about what you would like to see in a development or a replacement tie down location. We're currently looking at the Lot 13 area and the midfield parking area, which is just south of the tower. And just so you know, and we'll repeat it several times, right now we're going to be working with the FAA on a waiver to allow those aircraft to stay parked in that location until we can get this new area developed. But part of being able to get that waiver is coming up with a plan of how we're going to be developing that area. So going back, the idea of this meeting is just to get some ideas of what you'd like to see in that area. And with that, we'll go ahead and do some introductions. Stephen, you mind going to the next slide? So I'm Matt Sikora. I work for the King County International Airport in the Properties and Business Development section. And with me today, I have Stephen Domino and Stephen Darengowski from RS&H, who will be helping us with this and getting our ideas and answering any questions folks might have. It looks like so far we have a fairly small session. So when we get into the Q&A session, feel free to unmute, talk, or use the raise your hand button, and we'll call on you. And just so folks know, we will be recording this meeting so that we're able to go back and make sure we capture every comment that was heard and when we go to do the next phase of this project. So with that, Stephen, I'll give it the mic over to you and let you take it away.
Great, thank you. So we've already done introductions. I just want to quickly go through the agenda. Matt's already talked a little bit about the purpose. We're going to show some drawings and hopefully provide a little better understanding of why we're working on this project. And then we want to discuss some of the goals and objectives. As Matt mentioned, part of the parking area is within the RPZ, and our goals for the project, or we need to relocate some of those aircraft that are tied down. And the ultimate goal is to have no reduction in the number of aircraft parking positions. So hopefully we'll be able to do that, but we don't know until we begin. Just for background, we are just starting. Matt mentioned that this is kind of a visioning session. I like to also think of it as a listening session. And what we're trying to do is before we even get going on this project, to hear from stakeholders so that your comments and input can help guide the study and the concepts and alternatives that we're going to look at. One of the things that we need to be concerned with are some of the site constraints and limitations on the site. It's going to limit what we're going to be able to do and not be able to do. It's a very small site. And we've already had a number of comments in an earlier meeting about some things that would be ideal at the site. We'd like to hear your comments as well. And then we're going to listen to your comments and talk a little bit about what the future vision is in this area. With that, Stephen, let's go to the next slide. So as Matt mentioned, the runway protection zone is such that it should not have any parked aircraft within it. You can see the area in red. There's quite a few aircraft parked in the runway protection zone. So we're looking at options to relocate these aircraft into the Lot 13 area. Next slide, Stephen. The Lot 13 area is just south of the FAA control tower and the airport rescue firefighter facility. There's already, as you can see here on the drawing, there's already some tie downs and hangars in the area that we're looking at, but the project area is actually to expand it further to the north, all the way over to the air traffic control tower. In addition, we need to make you aware that the airport is interested in trying to acquire some property to the west of the project site. And one of the things that we want to be able to do is to make sure that uh, as we evaluate options for this, that somehow we might be able to provide uh, some connectivity between the project site and this potential property that the airport might be able to acquire. Again, I need to make it really clear that the airport does not own it. Uh, it's not connected to the airport property. It's divided by East Marginal Way, and so that complicates quite a bit the uses of that property. We potentially see some of the uses there as facilities that don't necessarily need direct access to the airfield. So we call those non-aeronautical uses. With that, Stephen, if you'll go to the next slide. Uh, so again, zoomed in a little bit more, you can see the site that we're looking at. I'll try to draw it in a little bit larger here. So we're looking at the area in here. We need to maintain parking for FAA air traffic control tower. Uh, the goal, one of the other goals for the project is we do not anticipate, nor do we want to replace any of the T hangars that already exist here. So the goal would be to leave those hangars here. We noticed that the aircraft parking uh, does have some flexibility, and we'll be looking at alternatives of reconfiguring how these aircraft are tied down to be a little more efficient with the way it's configured. And then the primary area that we will be looking at is what's considered lot 13. And that's the area that we're going to try to maximize relocating some of the displaced aircraft. Again, this particular drawing does show the potential Jorgensen Forge site across the street from East Marginal Way. And ideally, we would like to incorporate in our concepts some way of eventually connecting in between these sites. Depending on how it's used, it may be used for airport maintenance type facilities or office facilities, or we don't know all the possible options. Perhaps there could be some aeronautical uses, but those would be very complicated simply because of the problem in being able to cross East Marginal Way. But this is the general area that we're going to be looking at, concepts. What I'd like to do is turn it over to Stephen, and he's going to go into a little more details about our goals and objectives.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. So our goals and planning objectives, what we try to do is we try to establish what are we trying to achieve with each planning study. It helps us to make sure that we're staying within the vision and moving forward in a positive direction. So one of the goals that we have established for this planning assignment is to correct the non-standard conditions at the airport and try to maintain or improve the safety of operations. Matt and Steve did the introduction about looking at the Northeast tie downs and resolving the non-standard condition within the RPZ. What we also want to make sure too is when we're proposing a plan, we're not trading one non-standard condition for another. We're trying to make it compliant with FAA design criteria. Second to that, enhancing the efficiencies of operations, looking at potential improvements to circulation of aircraft from the apron environment to the runway. Steve had mentioned the Jorgensen Forge site, trying to provide the connectivity there. But what we're doing is making sure that the immediate plan that as a collective group of individuals we help identify is compatible with the airport's long-term vision of how to integrate that particular piece of property with the midfield air park. Fourth, the facility enhancements are developed through strategic capital improvement program planning. What we identify here today, we want to make sure that we identify what those enhancements are to a level of detail that the airport can then take and help program into their capital improvement program. The fifth one down at the bottom left is collaborate with key stakeholders, and that's why we're all here today, is we really want to understand each of your own unique perspectives because you all provide different views as to how you look at this particular site. So we want to capture those, and we truly want to capture your needs as to what you envision with the Midfield Air Park in the future. And then finally, the future facilities are designed and implemented to your needs as well too. When we look at orientation, facility needs, circulation, we want to make sure that we're capturing those needs adequately. So the next series of slides will go over some of the site considerations that we have for the Midfield Air Park. We'll be kind of going through a lot of these. I like to think of the site considerations as kind of the boundary in which we get to play with our puzzle pieces. So it establishes the framework in which we'll be taking all these individual puzzle pieces and trying to arrange them to create the future of what the Midfield Air Park will look like. The first one I'd like to discuss with everyone is the airfield and airspace design standards. So these are pre-described standards that are set forth by the FAA to protect the operations either on the ground or in the air. What's important to note is that each one of these have different limitations associated with it. So for instance, the taxiway Bravo object-free area you see is the first red line towards the bottom of the screen. This is an area where there can't be any objects within this particular limitation area as aircraft are taxiing along taxiway Bravo. There's also the aircraft parking limit line. That's a set standard based on the primary runway's design characteristics that we'll want to make sure that's kept clear of aircraft parking within it. That doesn't mean no facility can be in it. It just means that certain functions are prohibited and certain functions we can explore the opportunity to engage in them. The last two lines you see there are the Part 77 lines. These are airspace surface criteria lines based on where the runway sits in the category of aircraft and instrument approach capabilities that the runway provides. There are certain airspace requirements that are associated to make sure that we keep it clear of any penetrations to make sure that the persons and property on the ground are protected, but also too that the local airspace system is protected as well. The next consideration is your existing tenants. We know that there's some existing tenants within the hangars. There's some helicopter operations, and then also to the air traffic control tower. Right now, it's in its current location, but then in the future, as according to the master plan, it does have the opportunity to get relocated to another site as well too. So there may be opportunities in the future to potentially use the site. The next consideration are your utility infrastructures. There's a major utility corridor that runs along East Marginal Way, stormwater lines from that cross underneath East Marginal Way connecting to a pump station. And then also too, on the right-hand side, you have a water quality vault. We want to make sure that when we're developing the plan that not only do the does the utilities integrate with the plan, but also too, do the utilities have the capacity to serve the facilities that we're proposing as well too. Additionally, we want to make sure that the facilities we're not proposing don't directly impact one of the utility infrastructure components if it can be avoided. And lastly, any environmental considerations, such as the landscaping associated with the site as well too. Do we want to increase landscaping, decrease landscaping, a component that can be considered. So here's the fun part of today's call. This is where we really want to hear from you. We've kind of outlined, based on all those considerations, the boundaries of the puzzle piece that we've described, and we want to hear from you. What facility enhancements would you like to see in the Midfield Air Park? What does user experience look like for you? Are there things that you'd prefer to see here to provide maybe a higher level of service? Are there existing challenges that you're having, either the Northeast Air Park or another portion of the airport that you would like to see the Midfield Air Park be able to resolve, trying to provide maybe some additional efficiencies. And then lastly, what does successful planning look like for you? Are there things that you would wish that could get incorporated into the plan as we're diving into the Midfield Air Park? So I think with that, I will open it up for input, questions, comments. As Matt had mentioned earlier, we want this to be a collaborative discussion. We're here to listen to your thoughts and suggestions that you have for the Midfield Air Park. So feel free to shout out your thoughts, raise your virtual hand, even use the comment feature within Zoom as well too. We're here to take this time to really listen to what you have to say.
So to get started, I see Evan's question in the chat. Will the aircraft currently parked inside the aircraft parking limit line to be moved further out? Yes. When we're looking at the study as a whole, we're going to try to be as compliant as possible, maintaining that no reduction in aircraft. So that will be one thing we're looking to do on the compliance side. I see Brian's hand raised. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, so with this air park, my understanding is that you're trying to accommodate airplanes that would be displaced from northeast parking. Will the capacity only accommodate that, or in the event that a cargo ramp displaces people that are in the southwest hangars, will there also be room to accommodate those displaced airplanes?
So right now we're still in the really early stages of this. We're in the information gathering stage. We haven't put any airplanes on paper, and Stephen will talk about that a little bit more of the next steps. But what we'll have to do is we'll kind of have to, in the next steps, determine what we want, how many airplanes, is there other amenities that you would like to see over tie down spaces, and just kind of go over the pros and cons of each one and look at a couple of different alternatives. But this is really intended to, the first thing would be to get the aircraft that are in an FAA non-standard condition relocated. And then any extra spaces we can get for other things would be great, but we're really trying to focus on the non-standard parked aircraft currently.
Okay, thanks.
And Eric, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, question and a comment. Do you know currently what waiting lists look like for hangars and tie downs at the moment? Any sense of that?
I don't have exact numbers for you off the top of my head, but last time I checked, we were about 75 people for tie downs, and our hangars are broken up into 4 lists: small T hangar, large T hangar, small exec, and large exec. And if I added everyone together, it would be probably 30 to 45 folks. With that said, we do know there's a lot of people on our waiting list that are currently, let's say, parked at Painfield or Renton that are looking to move over. So it's not necessarily all folks looking to enter the GA market on the area, but it's some shuffle as well. But there is a substantial waiting list for parking space at BFI.
That's what I suspected. So, I mean, my comment would be that I would want to see the most dense aircraft parking and possible hangar expansion that you could possibly fit into that space. It seems to me that with the waiting lists, probably very high priority is parking planes. That's all I had.
Thanks, Eric. And we had a question also in the chat: how many parking spaces do we expect to get from the area? I touched on that a little bit. That is still to be determined, but we'll get into that a little bit more in the next phase of this project. And then Dan, can you expand on your question for me in the chat?
While we're waiting, we also have Alex with his hand up.
Yeah, so all right, looking at your diagram, I think I'm right on the northeast corner of that holding tank. So I think I'm one of those airplanes that's in the way right now. Things I use at midfield is the bathroom on the end of the T hangars is super useful, and the wash rack. So that's a positive thing. Please keep those if you can. The only negative I've seen sort of parked there is sometimes on the snow removal, there'll be a big berm sort of preventing us moving. And then I had a question, which is how do you envisage sort of moving the aircraft out of that, out of that sort of runway zone that you can't park in? And a problem we've had down at Southwest parking is if you put the airplanes too close, we've actually had a little bit of rash on some of the cap airplanes down there just by getting close. So what can you do to alleviate that?
So when we're doing the planning study, we can look at potential different size tie downs. We can look to see if there's a standard and what the ones at Southwest are looking at versus Northeast. I know our Northeast ones have quite a bit of space in between. And that's a really good question because most of our tie down spaces are currently designed for like a 172, but as Cirruses and DA42s, et cetera, with really wide wingspans, is that something we need to take a look at to make sure that we can accommodate all? Is it a mix of tie downs? So that will be different things we'd be playing with and looking for ideas on.
And Matt, the only other thing I would add on to that too is the size of the tie downs, but also too, we're looking at the circulation, the orientation of the tie downs themselves too, trying to optimize the space the best we can to meet the planning objectives.
Someone had a question about potentially what the Jorgensen Forge site could be used for, and then someone else had said something about moving the tower over there. Has there been any discussion about that, and what can that space be used for?
Yeah, so in the airport master plan, we actually show the tower going over to the Jorgensen Forge, assuming we're able to purchase that property. It's roughly in the location on the master plan of a study that was done in 1991 with the FAA for a tower siting. Granted, that's a pretty old study and would have to be relooked at, with the FAA to make sure that area would fit, meets current standards, et cetera. That would be a great example of something that could go over there to make more room for aircraft, where they could still do their job controlling the traffic, but don't need to be next to the taxiway. Some other ideas, could be warehouses, offices, our maintenance facility. There's a lot of things that need access to the airport, but not necessarily need to be access to the runway. So it'd be looking at those kind of things primarily. But at this point, we haven't thrown anything on the table or taken anything off the table because we still would have to acquire that property first.
Hey, fellas.
Yes, Dave.
This is Dave. Don't close your minds to parking airplanes across the street. They do it in Anchorage, Alaska all the time. All you need is a stoplight, taxi right across, and you've got almost looks like an unlimited number of parking spots available over there. So in your planning, don't rule that out. You just need a good stoplight. And I've actually used that taxiway in Anchorage.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, we've thought of all kinds of things over there, and that, like you say, it's not off the table yet. Just wanted folks to know that we don't own that property, but we also don't want to build anything in this study area that would prevent us from doing any future development over there, whatever it might be. Don't want to put something in the way we can't take back out, type deal.
The more parking, the better.
Let's see here.
To go back up, I think just Dan Key added some comments, mostly wondering if pieces could be moved across boundaries, like if the tower were moved, would it ever make sense to have the tower in this lot? I think we maybe touched on that. Exchange for better opportunities for shorter facilities in its location. Yeah, I think we touched on that.
And Alex, you said you would love to see the planning effort also consider potential displacement of aircraft from the planned cargo ramp. Just so you know, in the master plan, we've changed that from a cargo ramp to redevelopment of aviation facilities, since we don't have a crystal ball and don't know what necessarily would be going down there. So Definitely something we want to try to accommodate as many general aviation aircraft as we can. And our goal with this project would be to prevent any reduction. But like I said earlier, we're really trying to focus on this project on seeing how many aircraft we can fit over here, and really try to, the first aircraft we would move would be the ones that are in the safety surface.
Got it. Makes sense. Thanks.
You're welcome.
There's a question whether the master plan's available for public.
Yes, the draft master plan is up on our website. Kevin probably can post a link to it. As well as there is a good 4 or 5 page summary document of the master plan, and then also a 12-page executive summary, where you can get most of the information you're looking for out of it. But the master plan is quite long, and we just kind of are finalizing it now, and it's going up to our executive's office for review.
And I'll just add, I'll send you the link. We have kind of finalized master plan documents that we haven't updated to the website yet, but I don't believe there's substantive changes from these drafts, but just wanted to say that as an FYI.
And we'll work on getting them updated. They came in at about 3 p.m. today, so
yeah.
Just a little lag. Alex, I see your hand still raised. Did you have something else for us?
Oh yeah, sorry. Just one thing I just wanted to just stress is probably what I consider probably to be my biggest concern, which is just the fact that over time we're seeing kind of the amount of space available for general aviation, especially in light GA, really being limited, right? And the fact that the Jorgensen site is being opened, I think, opens up some really interesting possibilities. And I guess my only feedback here was, as we look ahead to how that space could be used, I would love to see whatever creative solutions are possible, to potentially use that for aeronautical use. If there's opportunities to like build an overpass over East Marginal Way, or whatever else might be potentially feasible there, I would love to, just see that explored.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you, Alex. And when we if we ever acquire that property, we'll have to do the same kind of study we're doing now, but for that parcel. So, but yeah, at this point, nothing's off the table. So
That's
thank
great.
you for
Thanks.
that. Dave, your hand's still up. Did you have something else?
Oh, no, I was just looking at that space across the street. I really like it. You could move the helos over there tomorrow if you wanted to, and you own the property.
Yes, own the property and get some environmental stuff done. But yes, that would be another good use of that. Folks that don't need access directly to the runway.
Did the airport purchase the parcel south of Norfolk Street?
South of Norfolk Street? No.
Yeah, everything over there by that Starbucks, south of the Military Delivery Center.
So the area on the other side of Norfolk, or south of Norfolk, was purchased by Prologis. We tried to get it, but we couldn't get it. We tried working with them to use it for air cargo or something. There's a lot of potential there being right across from the runway. Didn't work out like we would have hoped, but we were able to lease from them with a option to purchase the runway protection zone off the end of the runway. They originally wanted to put a 4 or 5 story parking garage right off the end of the runway, which would have impacted the approach to the airport. So we were able to at least keep, the impact of the airport gone, but we weren't able to necessarily get it to develop.
Thanks for that.
You're welcome. What is the environmental impact analysis like for parcel planning? So what we'll do is we'll go through, and Steve or Steven might have a better answer for this. But from my experience with this, we would come up with our preferred alternative, and then if we get it put in the budget and start a design, that's kind of when we would start the environmental phase, if not slightly sooner. And we'd be working with the FAA on that. So there's different levels of environmental. There's a categorical exclusion, environmental assessment, or environmental impact study. And depending on what you would be planning for that parcel, it would depend on what level of environmental you would need from the NEPA side. which is the national level. And then of course we have the state requirements on the SEPA side. So that's about when that environmental planning would start. And they look at all kinds of things. Stephen, you probably can give a better list, but it's air quality, noise, emissions, that kind of thing.
The other thing I think maybe Matt, you referenced is the existing site has facilities on it, and there needs to be a determination. I'm not sure if the airport knows that yet, what the potential of hazardous materials is, lead paint, asbestos, things of that nature. So, you know, part of acquiring the property is to get an understanding of what environmental consequences they would have over there that would need to be mitigated also. So it complicates the acquisition process.
Thanks, Steve. Yes, that's a very good point. That used to be a steel mill, so there's definitely some potential for contamination over there. Okay, guys, don't be shy. What other good ideas do y'all have?
Matt, maybe we can review the schedule and then come back for additional questions as we're talking
sounds
about
good.
schedule.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, so I'll move on to project schedule real quick. So our project schedule, so as Matt mentioned, we're in the investigation data collection phase. So right now we're defining what the vision is, identifying what the demand's going to be, and then also to looking at what the short-term requirements are going to be, all in combination with all those puzzle pieces and boundaries that I described earlier with the site considerations. From this meeting, what we're going to do is we're going to take all the input that everyone's provided to us from the morning session and from this session and work through developing alternatives that look at accommodating the displaced aircraft from the Northeast Air Park and then integrating the proposed facilities that everyone has mentioned and trying to develop some concepts that we'll bring back to the table for you to review as a collective group. So we're looking for kind of the next time we'll all reconnect. Sometime we're aiming for the week of July 5th as a time for all of us to reconvene, look at those alternative concepts, and then get your input on them. From there, once we get the concepts, what we'll do is we'll work with the airport to identify a preferred alternative. From there, we'll then develop a project definition page or a one pulp page that will have project definitions, project descriptions, detailed work elements, the necessary details that the airport needs to help program into their CIP, and we'll work with them to prioritize, you know, when that project occurs. So with that, I will go back to this slide and see if that's generated any more questions since then.
I will just say I've been following the comments about the inside 5-story parking garage for our GA aircraft. You know, it's done for boats. I have pictures of the marina I was at over the weekend in Georgia, and there's got to be a way to do it for airplanes. I don't know if it's been done yet, but you got to figure there might be a way.
Go out to Kenmore and watch how they lift their seaplanes out of the water. That's all you need is one of those lifts, and you could put it on a nice high step with that.
I might have to run out there. Thanks, Dave. Always looking for creative ideas of how to maximize our 600 and something acres we have out at the airport.
You could at least get them lifted up high enough to put one on top of another, kind of like parking lots in New York City.
Yeah. Anyone have anything else for us?
I got a couple of things here. So to get those airplanes out of that runway zone, can you turn the existing parking you see south of the wash rack there? Can you turn it 90 degrees and put cables on the ground? I see a lot of cables used for tie downs at other airports, and that would allow you to adjust for your wingspan then as well. So effectively, you would then, some airplanes would taxi out directly towards the taxiway. Some would taxi towards the T hangars. So you can get more density that way. And then the other one is, if you can get rid of that parking lot, move the fence out to the highway, and then you can get a whole row of airplanes along that fence as well.
Alex, all good ideas. Thank you.
There was a section of space up at Northeast Parking that was outside the RPZ on one of the earlier pictures that were displayed. There's no intent to maintain that parking, that little swath of parking area there. Is the intent to just completely abandon Northeast Parking altogether?
Hey, Stephen, can you go back to that original slide? Is that too hard with the RPZ stuff in it?
No, not at all. Let me go back real quick.
So Brad,
east of the red area, there's
yeah. There's between about, I don't know, 4 and 9 spots there, depending on what happens with the runway threshold. So right now we're focusing on the aircraft in the red,
right,
trying to relocate the non-compliant aircraft. But if we were able to get all those aircraft over there, it might make better sense to put all the general aviation in one area. But we'll just have to see how we can maximize it the best.
Okay. Okay.
What happens if you extend the runway a little bit further?
Well, that pushes the RPZ further.
That would move that RPZ a little further out. You could move it out to that road there.
Yeah, the concern with that would probably be the north east corner that's already getting pushed more into the Georgetown and that development there where the Boeing apartments are, as well as the thresholds getting relocated to comply with the threshold crossing height requirements. And there's a very small window we have that we can move it to. So 300 feet is kind of optimal. I think 400 and something was the maximum that we can move it to. But
yeah, every foot though you can move it out. That's going to preserve a little bit more parking there in Northeast.
Yes, understood. Okay, thanks, Stephen. I think we can go back to the other slide now. Any possibilities to move the Boeing facilities on the northwest end of the runway to Jorgensen to create a general Northwest Aviation parking lot? That area is all under long-term lease to Boeing, so that would have to be renegotiated when that lease expires, and it's got quite a few years left.
The street idea is becoming more and more appealing for GA parking on the old Jorgensen Forge site with a stoplight.
Yeah, we're I'm not going to say we're throwing that out because it's strongly been considered, and I'll say I've gone as far as to look at the little bollards that pop up out of the ground and see if you can't add some protection. When the stoplight comes up, the bollards come up, the airplane goes across, the bollards go down, the light changes, and they do it with railroads, so you can't roll it out for airplanes. And thank you, Myron. Sorry, I missed your hand up there. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to kind of offer support around the idea of parking. I think is so critical, and having it in that other area. I'm also wondering if there's other parts. I'm not as familiar with all of Boeing Field, but any like administrative buildings in other parts of the field or office buildings or things like that could be moved to that area to free up space for parking in other parts. That way, we can maximize the efficiency of the space.
Thanks for that. Yeah, we're always looking to see how we can maximize the efficiency of the space. This was the area that was called out in this master plan. We'll probably, because it was started in 2014, be doing one, maybe 3 to 5 years down the road, if not sooner. So there might be some new parcels that come available that we can look at. But right now, this is kind of about it with easy access. Some other ideas would be major improvements.
Got it. So we can like, there's no other like car parking or minor buildings that could be moved into the Jorgensen space and then those are used for tie downs.
I'm not going to say no, but it's something we need to look at more into.
Got it.
Do you know where the county is at in the purchase of that property? I first heard about it two and a half years ago or something like that, when John Parrott had mentioned it at a kind of an open house thing in the terminal building. Obviously those things don't happen overnight, but is there meaningful discussions going on, or where's it really at? Do you know?
Yeah, I'll be happy to tell you we're working on buying it. We put in an offer. The offer was accepted, but the condition of the site has, we said it has to be basically looking like a parking lot, and right now there's some deliberations upon the current owner and the EPA about how to do that. So
Oh, okay, all right.
that's what's holding it up, is the environmental on that site. There's some underground tanks and some other things that need to be fixed before the county's willing to take possession
Okay,
of it.
all right. Well, that's promising.
From Patrick, any possibility of parking in front of the corporate hangars? Which corporate hangars are you specifically referring to, Patrick?
Sorry about that. I'm looking at Google Maps, and it just looks like there's on the east side, there's a bunch of corporate hangars. And I know when I taxi, sometimes they'll have a seminar or somebody, and there'd be a ton of corporate jets in there. And I'm just not sure why we couldn't park there and still give them access out of their corporate hangars to the ramp.
Yeah, those are all individual leaseholds, so it would have to be up to that business if they would want to provide general aviation parking or not, but that would be each company's business decision.
So they own the ramp, or they lease it?
Correct. Mm-hmm. Most of them own it up to kind of where the service road is. Anything else?
I just want to make one comment. I think this is all great that the county is looking at this and looks like it's honestly moving in the right direction to accommodate the planes at Northeast Parking. Just as in a general sense, I think I'd like to see this maximized for aircraft parking. I would hate to think that there's people suggesting that we should probably put some sort of self-serve fuel farm in there and all these other nice things to have at the expense of parking spots. I think we really should focus on parking, maximizing parking in this whole exercise. And I mean, there's plenty of places to buy fuel and such on Boeing Field. We don't really need, honestly, a self-serve fuel island or anything like that. Even the wash racks. I mean, you look in the picture up there now, there's that wash rack kind of right in the middle of the diamond. I would even say that wash racks can be kind of gone. They can go away for the most part. I mean, maybe have a central wash rack somewhere that we could all taxi to. It's just really a matter of convenience. But if like that wash rack in this photo, in this picture is removed, there's probably a half dozen more tie downs right there that could be that could accommodate more aircraft.
Yeah, I'm certainly supportive of that. The wash rack's so seldom used.
Yeah, yeah.
Taxi anywhere else on the field to get
exactly.
I agree. I don't think you'd have anyone unhappy if all you did was put as many tie down spots as you could here.
Right. And I don't know what was said in the earlier meeting today, but outside of this meeting and probably the earlier one, I've heard a lot of people say that they want a self-serve fuel island. I don't that's kind of all in the quest of having cheaper fuel, which I totally understand.
That's
To have a tie down, I mean, a seltzer fuel island at the expense of tie downs when we are in the situation we're in, I don't think so.
I'll be honest, on the self-serve fuel, that's not been an issue for the 15 years I've been a tenant here.
If I could make a suggestion, one of the things that we'll be doing is we've received lots of comments from this morning and this evening as well, and varied interest in, what could happen here. One of the things that we'll do with the airport and the stakeholders is to develop a list of priorities, and we'll come up with different options that show, how to maximize the number of aircraft parking in here, what putting a wash rack or self-fuel facility would do to that number, and again, with the stakeholders, identify, what really should the priorities be, so that we come up with an alternative that is, that most stakeholders would agree with.
And I'll just add, Evan, you mentioned, I think it was you that mentioned, can you put the wash rack in areas where you can't park airplanes? That's definitely an idea. I'll let Steve or Steven answer that question. But yeah, there's certain things you can do between that taxiway object free area and the no aircraft parking limit line, other than park aircraft, that we can use to optimize space.
Yeah, Matt, to kind of go a little bit more detail into it, what the FAA is looking for is, from the aircraft parking limit standpoint, is that there's not going to be any long-term stationary objects in there, such as parked aircraft that are going to be there for an extended period of time. Within that aircraft parking limit line, that's where you can have temporary functions, maneuverability, circulation. Those things are all permissible within that aircraft parking limit line.
So that sounds like a wash rack is allowed then. Is that true?
Correct. Under the FAA criteria, it would be allowed.
And Patrick and Dan, thanks. We got the bathroom. I got it highlighted. We'll make sure that's on the list.
Yeah. And another question for you guys, what are the limitations on that storage tank as well? Does that constrain us in any way?
On the storage tank, the stormwater storage tank over there?
The stormwater tank.
Oh, I'd have to get our engineers on the phone, but I think they upgraded the weight capacity of those, and I think it's about 1 million pounds. So I don't think that's going to limit us as part of this.
Okay.
Granted, we don't like generally putting things on top of where we would have to lift up to service the vault, but that's a pretty small area compared to the overall vault size itself. Okay, guys, we have about 12 minutes. I want to make sure we get all the ideas on the table. And what's the status of the other parking area threatened by the new cargo facility? Status quo for now, guys. There's nothing about the new parking facility. Really, if we turn said, okay, this is going to be a larger cargo facility today, you're probably looking 3 years out. We move really slow, folks, at the county level. So we'll keep folks updated on that. And if it helps reassure people, it was also in the 2004/2008 master plan. So we're in 2021 and there's still GA hangars. So hopefully that puts a little bit of folks at ease.
Not that this has anything to do with this particular discussion. Who owns the Randy's property at this point?
The airport.
Oh, does it? Okay. It's kind of an island there, but it's not really useful for anything. But
it's not useful right now, but it was too close to the airport not to buy and let someone try to build a high-rise development or something on that corner that would impact the airport. So don't know for sure what we're doing with it yet, but the first step is to try to get it so it's not vandalized every day, and then we'll call it a win. Couple other questions. no idea what happened to the memorabilia. When we walked in, it was vacant as could be. The only thing we have is the giant Randy sign. So we'll see what we can do with that, see if a museum wants it or something like that. Does the FAA present high rises from showing up next to airports? Yes and no. Folks are supposed to file what's called a 7460 form, and they can say, yes, that's going to impact the airport, but unless the airport owns it, and it's up to the local jurisdictions to determine if that can be built or not built. So we can say that'll make the airport unusable. The FAA can say that, and a local jurisdiction still could allow that to be built, unfortunately. So that's why we worked really hard to protect that approach on the Prologis site. And the construction, Jim, is that Prologis site. They're building some warehousing. I can't tell you exactly what the plans are, but we do know there's warehousing, and we worked with them really hard to make sure it all stayed out of the Part 77 airspace surface there, down there.
The relocation of the control tower obviously is going to entail a lot of coordination and financial support from the FAA. Where are they in that whole thing? Are they on board with moving it? Are they actively planning to move it at some point? Where's that whole thing? Or is it just kind of a dream right now?
They're about as far along as we are, with a square on the map saying this looks like a good spot for an air traffic control tower. The rest of it hasn't gone, but you talk to the local guys. Supposedly that's the oldest air traffic control tower west of the Mississippi. It's very, very space constrained, and they want a new facility. There's definitely some stuff wrong with it, but then they also like it because it's so close to the runway. So that would have to be, you're correct, worked with the FAA, programmed and built. So that'll be a ways out. So like Steven mentioned, this could be a phased project. We get what we get now, and if the air traffic control tower gets relocated, it expands, a little bit more. And just because that plan isn't going to move forward further, it doesn't mean that this plan can't move forward up to a certain point.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
727 ever moves, that'll free up a few spots too.
Well, that's what Northeast parking is good for in the future.
There you go.
Working on the 727, I'm not going to promise, but I really hope it's gone before this this plan moves much further out of the development stage. So we're working really hard on getting that thing out of there. Anything else, folks?
Well, hey, just in general, when you mentioned the 727 in dead aircraft, there's a lot of them on the airport. You and I had a discussion sometime back a few months ago about the general state of that. Is there any efforts or any movement on the county's efforts to contact these people? Because obviously with space, it is super premium. While I respect the owner's right to, store their dead aircraft, but some of these things have been dead for 20 years, unflown, out of airworthiness. Just eliminating or corralling all of the dead aircraft on the airport I think would help relieve pressure on the parking situation.
Yeah, I'll second that, because there's a clause, if I recall, in my lease for the tie down saying I've got to be airworthy.
Oh, really?
Yes, there is, and it is something we're working on, Brad. I agree, there are way too many dead aircraft out there, and unfortunately our county code and the Washington state code are a little bit circular on what we're allowed to do, so it's a little bit harder than it should be. But
yeah,
I like the idea of trying to corral them all into one aircraft spot and make as much usable space as possible. So I'll definitely keep that in mind.
Yeah, there's that twin Aerostar wherever it is these days.
That's as bad as a 727.
It's almost, isn't it? It's been there as long as I have.
Yeah.
Can they go in the RPZ if they're not airworthy?
Well, that's what's kind of what I was going towards.
Yeah.
No, unfortunately not. But
it only looks like an airplane. They're never going to fly again.
Yeah.
There's a 152 in Northeast parking that has had flat tires for 20 years.
It used to have flat tires. Somebody actually put air in them recently.
Somebody put air into it. Fair enough, Rob. Yes. It's next to my airplane. I know it every day.
Well, the west side of the airport at Midfield, I think that's actually the graveyard there. There's probably 5 of them there, all in the same very local area. Yeah, there's plenty of that around. But
Yeah, no, it's definitely something on our radar. I'm actually going out way too early in the morning to go do an audit of our tie downs. And we're really trying to see too, are there spaces that are being paid for that aren't being used? Because our goal is not just the derelict, but someone paying $125 a month for a tie down space doesn't do any good for the general aviation industry, doesn't do any good for the airport, doesn't do any good for the businesses on the field. It's flying aircraft that make that. So
I'd caution you a little on that. I'll give you an example right now. My airplane's not, it's not parked there because it's been down for 2 months for some avionics upgrades. But I'm definitely coming back. And then a couple of years ago, when I was replacing an engine, I was slugging it out with Continental for nearly a year, and the airplane was over in Bremerton during that time.
No, thanks, Alex, and they'll all be handled kind of case by case. But
so it's not an intention to not be there. I would have loved to have been back as soon as I could, but it just wasn't possible.
Yep.
But to echo that a little bit, there are a number of airplanes. There's a plane next to me that leaves every winter and probably heads south, and then right about now comes back for the summer. So, there's some seasonality stuff that goes on too that maybe shouldn't be as encouraged.
So anyway, that's all things we're looking for. We're just really trying to make sure we're utilizing every inch that we can utilize. I wanted to let folks know this isn't the only time to communicate with us. You can always email us on this on our KCI community outreach. We'll be using that for gathering comments. And Stephen, we're looking for June 4th it is for the comments to get back to us.
Correct. Yep. We're looking for comments by June 4th. That'll help us get the initial input. So for us to then start to develop some alternative concepts. And as Matt was mentioning too, this isn't the only time that we'll want input. We went through the project schedule. We'll want your input again once we've developed those alternative concepts.
Anyone else have anything for us before we end?
I just wanted to say it's really encouraging to hear that you all are reaching out around GA, because I think a lot of people are worried that GA is dying out at Boeing Field, and I think it's really important to keep it alive.
Appreciate that comment. And yes, we agree with you, and we want to work with you, y'all. And Stephen Ratcliffe isn't on this call. He was on the earlier call, but thanks to him for really working to put some groups together and helping get messaging out for us and things of that nature. And if no one has anything else, we got 3 minutes. I know you guys like to talk, but no, if no one has anything else, we'll end. I know it is dinner time, but feel free to reach out to me directly, reach out to the community outreach, and then we'll stay in touch, and we'll send out the information for the next meeting, which should be the week of July 5th sometime, if everything moves ahead according to plan. So with that said, everyone, have an outstanding evening, and we'll stay in touch. And if not before July, we'll see everyone in July.
Hey, thanks so much. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.